I was right in the middle of my pitch when the sharp crack of my boss's hand against the conference table echoed through the room. Whack! The entire room fell silent. "This is an embarrassment," she declared. Her voice was cold and sharp. "Take a seat, Chloe, before you make this worse for all of us." I was standing at the head of the table, my slide presentation glowing on the screen behind me, explaining customer segmentation models to our prospective client, the Stellara Corporation, and what felt like the entire leadership of Apex Data Solutions. This was the culmination of 11 weeks of my life's work, all condensed into charts, graphs, and insights that were meant to secure an $18 million contract. And then my boss, Eleanor Vance, stood up. "Sit down before you embarrass us more." Her words sliced through the air with the precision of a surgeon's scalpel. 14 people in the room collectively held their breath. The vice president of strategy stared down at his notepad as if he couldn't stand to look at me. Ben Carter from the finance department leaned over to his colleague and muttered something that made them both visibly cringe. This wasn't real. It couldn't be. Are people supposed to make actual business decisions based on this? Eleanor went on, her tone a perfect imitation of feigned concern. "Chloe, I'm not sure where you were taught market analysis, but this entire methodology is fundamentally broken." My face felt like it was on fire. My hands began to shake uncontrollably. I'd been at this company for 2 years. I'd pulled countless all-nighters. I held a 94% client satisfaction rate. I had personally saved 3 major accounts that everyone else had given up on, but none of that mattered in this moment. Eleanor was now pacing in front of the projection screen, pointing at my charts as if they were exhibits in a murder trial. The demographic models completely ignore shifts in generational wealth. The predictive analytics are based on outdated regression techniques. Outdated. I want to apologize that this presentation even made it to this stage. My phone vibrated in my pocket. Once, a second time, then a third, in quick succession. Everyone in that room was waiting for me to crumble, to burst into tears, or offer a pathetic apology. They were waiting for me to validate Eleanor's story that I was an incompetent analyst who had flown too close to the sun. Instead, I calmly closed my laptop and stacked my printed notes into a tidy pile. "I'll step out so you can take over the presentation," I said, my voice barely a whisper. Eleanor's expression shifted from surprise to smug satisfaction. She thought she'd won. As I walked towards the heavy wooden door, I finally glanced at my phone. 3 texts from a number I didn't recognize. "This is Dr. Evelyn Reed. Step outside." Then, "No, I mean it." And the final one, "Your manager is about to get a reality check she won't forget." The client. Eleanor had just publicly executed me in front of the one person with the power to end her career, and she was completely oblivious. My name is Chloe Evans, and up until about 3 minutes ago, I thought I had a clear understanding of how the professional world operated. You put in the hard work, you got noticed, and you moved up the ladder. It seemed simple enough. But as I stood in the hallway outside that conference room, staring at those 3 text messages, I realized just how naive I had been. The hallway air felt frigid compared to the stifling tension of the conference room. Or maybe that was just the shock finally catching up with me. The burning sensation in my cheeks was starting to fade, but my hands were still trembling. The phone felt like a lead weight in my hand, its screen glowing with words that were like a lifeline I never knew I needed. "Step outside." I was already out here. "Your manager is about to get a reality check she won't forget." What could that possibly mean? Who was Dr. Evelyn Reed, really, beyond the prestigious title and the company she represented? And why on earth was she texting me instead of sitting in that room as Eleanor presented some watered-down, bastardized version of my own work? I could hear the muffled sound of Eleanor's voice through the thick conference room door. She was in the middle of her explanation now, probably showing slides I had never seen, presenting concepts she had never thought of, and positioning herself as the strategic mastermind who had swooped in to save the day from my flawed analysis. I leaned my head back against the cool wall and tried to force my breathing back to normal. 11 weeks. That's the time I had invested in the Stellara analysis, and it wasn't just a casual 9-to-5 effort. It was 11 weeks of 16-hour days, of working through weekends, of nights where I literally fell asleep with my cheek pressed against printouts of consumer data. I had personally conducted interviews with over 200 individuals across 8 different markets. I had built the predictive algorithms from the ground up, accounting for 17 distinct variables. I'd cross-referenced spending habits with psychographic profiles using techniques I had never tried before. The segmentation analysis alone took me 3 solid weeks to get right. I'd refined the confidence intervals so many times I could probably recite the formulas in my sleep. This wasn't just another project for me. This was the single best piece of work I had ever produced. And Eleanor had asked for all my files just yesterday afternoon. It was the first time she had shown even a flicker of interest in the project since assigning it to me 3 months ago. She claimed she needed the context for the client meeting, that she trusted me but wanted to be prepared for any high-level strategic questions. So I had sent her everything, every single file, every draft, every line of code. Now I knew why. She didn't need my work to support me. She needed it so she could figure out how to tear it down. My phone buzzed one more time. A 4th message. 2 minutes. Rooftop garden. I looked up and down the deserted hallway. The elevators were just down the hall. The rooftop garden was on the top floor, 6 stories up, a space normally reserved for executive functions and wooing high-value clients. This was all feeling completely surreal. The client was secretly texting me, telling me to meet her while my boss was in a meeting, likely explaining how she had single-handedly salvaged my amateurish work. I should have turned back. I should have marched back into that room and defended myself, explained that Eleanor's criticisms were based on early drafts that I had since refined and perfected. But what good would that have done? I was a senior analyst, and she was a senior director. In a room filled with executives, whose version of the story would they believe? The elevator chimed softly as the doors slid open to an empty car that smelled faintly of coffee and expensive perfume. I stepped in and pressed the button for the roof level. As the car ascended, I saw my reflection in the polished metal doors. I looked exactly as I felt. My face was flushed, my eyes were wide with a nervous energy, and my posture was rigid with a tension I couldn't seem to shake. My navy blue blazer was perfectly pressed, my blouse was immaculate, and my hair was tied back in a neat, professional ponytail that suddenly felt like it was strangling me. I looked like a woman who had her life completely under control. I felt like a woman whose entire career was imploding in slow motion. The elevator doors opened to a small vestibule leading to a set of glass doors. Beyond them, I could see the rooftop garden. The Boston skyline stretched out in every direction under a blanket of heavy gray clouds that looked ready to burst. The terrace was empty, save for a few tables with their umbrellas folded down and a single woman standing by the railing, her back turned to me, Dr. Evelyn Reed. She turned as she heard the door slide open. Her dark hair, streaked with silver, was pulled back into a severe but elegant bun. She wore designer glasses that likely cost more than my car payment and a charcoal gray suit that was so perfectly tailored it had to be custom made. She was tall, at least 5'10", and held herself with an air of absolute authority that only comes from decades of being unequivocally correct about very complicated subjects. "Chloe Evans," she said. It wasn't a question. It was a statement of fact. I just nodded, not trusting myself to speak. "Walk with me." She gestured toward the far side of the terrace, away from the doors and any chance of being overheard. We walked without a word. A chilly wind swept across the open space, carrying the scent of impending rain and the faint smell of exhaust from the streets far below. The city buzzed with the constant hum of traffic, construction, and the million unseen conversations happening in the buildings all around us. When we reached the edge of the terrace, Dr. Reed stopped and faced me. "Your manager." she began, her tone clinical and direct, does not understand your work because she is incapable of performing work at that level. I opened my mouth to say something, then closed it. What was I supposed to say to that? The segmentation analysis you were presenting, she continued, it uses a modified Reed-Henley model. I know this because I am the Reed in Reed-Henley. The world seemed to tilt on its axis. The adaptations you implemented, integrating generational spending habits with geographic volatility, are a significant step forward for the methodology. Your confidence interval calculations are based on a modified Bayesian framework that reduces the margin of error by nearly 30% compared to the industry standard. She paused, letting her words sink in. Your manager just spent the last 10 minutes in that conference room explaining why a methodology I pioneered is fundamentally broken. She did this with complete and utter confidence in front of me, because she has no idea who I am beyond my job title. My mind was scrambling to keep up. Dr. Evelyn Reed. The Evelyn Reed. I had read her papers. I had used her models. I had cited her research in my academic work and throughout my professional career. She was the architect of the very methodology I had built upon for the Stellara analysis, and Eleanor had just called it broken in front of her. Dr. Reed, Evelyn, she corrected, her voice still clinical, but I could see a predatory glint behind her neutral expression. I need you to listen very carefully, Chloe. Your manager didn't criticize your work because it was flawed. She criticized it because she can't comprehend it. And she can't comprehend it because she has never, in her career, produced work of that quality herself. The whole picture was beginning to materialize, but it was so massive, so overwhelming, that I could barely grasp it. She requested your files yesterday, Evelyn stated. She did not review them. She went straight to your preliminary drafts, the versions you created 3 weeks ago before you refined the models, and she is now presenting those outdated versions as the correct approach. How do you know that? The question slipped out before I could stop myself. Evelyn's smile was razor sharp. Because someone in your company's IT department sent me your complete file history last night. Creation dates, revision logs, metadata, every single iteration and improvement you made. I've spent the last 12 hours reviewing your actual work, not the dumbed-down version your manager is currently trying to pass off as her own. My head was spinning. Someone sent my work to the client? Without my permission? Who? I asked. Someone who has seen Eleanor Vance destroy careers before. Evelyn's expression hardened. Someone who decided it was time for it to stop. The wind gusted, whipping loose strands of hair from my ponytail. Below us, Boston hummed along, completely oblivious to the fact that my entire understanding of my career was being rewritten in real time. Eleanor became your manager 8 months ago, Evelyn said. It wasn't a question. I just nodded. And in that time, how many of your projects has she taken credit for? The answer was immediate and painfully obvious. All of them. Evelyn nodded as if I had just confirmed a long-held suspicion. She's done this before, at a different company. It's the same pattern. There was a brilliant risk analyst at Summit Strategies, a man named Leo Grant. Eleanor was his supervisor. She took credit for a predictive model he spent 2 years building. When he tried to complain, the company sided with her and pushed him out. My stomach twisted into a knot. I suspected she might be trying the same thing here, Evelyn continued. That's why I requested this meeting. It's why I insisted on seeing the analyst who actually did the preliminary research for Stellara. I wanted to evaluate the person behind the analysis, not just the analysis itself. You came here to test her, I said slowly. I came here to confirm my suspicions. Evelyn's voice turned to ice. And in the first 10 minutes of that meeting, your manager validated every single one of them. She doesn't understand your methodology. She can't explain your algorithms, and she's presenting work she didn't create and is incapable of understanding. She turned to look out at the skyline, her profile sharp against the gloomy clouds. So now you have a choice, Chloe. You can go back down to that conference room, accept Eleanor's narrative, and watch as she builds the rest of her career on your back. Or you can put your trust in me for the next hour, and I will show you what happens when incompetence is finally held accountable." I just stared at her, the wind whipping my hair across my face. What does that mean? What happens? She checked her watch, a sleek, minimalist piece that probably cost more than my entire professional wardrobe. It means that in approximately 4 minutes, I am going back into that conference room, and I am going to ask your manager some very specific, very technical questions about the methodology she just publicly trashed. My stomach plummeted. She won't be able to answer them. Exactly. Evelyn's expression was unreadable, but I saw that predatory glint in her eyes again. And when that becomes painfully obvious to everyone in that room, the VP of strategy, the CEO, all of those junior analysts watching, the narrative will shift. Suddenly, this won't be about your competence. It will be about hers. She started walking towards the doors, then stopped. "I need one thing from you, Chloe. Go to your desk. Pull up every major project you've completed since Eleanor became your supervisor. I want the file creation dates, the revision histories, every piece of metadata your system tracks. Can you do that?" I nodded, still unable to speak. "Good. Send it all to this email address." She handed me a stark white business card with nothing on it but her name and an email address. "I'll take care of the rest." She walked toward the doors, her heels clicking on the terrace floor with unwavering confidence. Just before she went inside, she glanced back at me. "Oh, and Chloe, don't go back to that conference room. What's about to happen in there? You don't need to see it. Trust me." And then she was gone, vanishing through the glass doors, leaving me alone on that rooftop with the wind, the city, and the dawning realization that my entire professional life was about to be turned upside down. I took the stairs down, not the elevator. My legs were shaking with each of the 6 flights, and my mind was racing even faster. By the time I reached my floor, the office was practically deserted. Everyone was either still in that conference room or had scattered to other parts of the building. My cubicle was tucked away in a corner of the analytics department, an island of quiet surrounded by empty desks and the low hum of sleeping computers. I slumped into my chair and just stared at the blank monitor for a moment before I finally reached out and woke it up. The login screen appeared, and I typed in my password with trembling fingers. Evelyn's words echoed in my head. Different company, same pattern. A few clicks opened up my project archive. 18 months of my work, all organized into neat folders labeled with client names and dates. I've always been obsessive about organization. It was something my previous boss had always praised. Every project was meticulously documented. Every draft was saved. Every piece of analysis was tracked from its inception to its completion. I had always thought it was just good professional practice. Now I realized I had been building a case file. I started with the Hartley manufacturing analysis from back in March. That was 6 weeks of work. Developing a supply chain optimization model that could predict disruptions based on 17 different variables. I'd interviewed logistics managers across 4 different states and built entire databases to track shipping routes, inventory levels, and supplier reliability. The algorithm I had created could forecast potential bottlenecks with an 83% accuracy rate. I pulled up the file properties. Creation date, March 3rd. Last modified by me, April 12th. The final report that had been presented to the board was dated April 15th, 3 days after I had finished my work. Eleanor's name was listed as the primary author, and mine was buried in the acknowledgments section under analytical support. My hand started shaking again. I moved on to the Riverside Retail project from July. I'd spent 5 weeks on that, developing a geographic expansion algorithm to identify underserved markets by analyzing demographic data, competitor density, and local spending habits. The model had identified 3 cities where Riverside could open new stores with minimal risk and maximum profit, with an 87% accuracy in identifying market gaps. Eleanor's quarterly review in August claimed she had pioneered a revolutionary approach to market expansion. Her words for my work. I kept scrolling through the files, and the pattern became sickeningly clear. The Davidson Hotel Group Assessment in October. That was my customer sentiment analysis, where I used natural language processing to sift through thousands of online reviews and pinpoint specific areas for service improvement. I had written custom code to sort the feedback into categories and generate actionable recommendations. Eleanor had won an Internal Innovation Award for it in November. I remembered watching her accept that award at the company holiday party. She gave a speech about the importance of strategic vision. She thanked her team in a vague, collective way that never once mentioned my name, and I had applauded right along with everyone else. My desk phone rang, its shrill sound shattering the silence. It was Maya Singh's extension. "Conference room B," she said, her voice clipped. 5 minutes. Don't tell anyone. Then the line went dead. Conference room B was a small, windowless room on the 3rd floor, a forgotten space hardly anyone ever used. I grabbed my laptop and took the stairs again, my heart pounding against my ribs. Maya was already there when I walked in, her own laptop open, with files spread across the small table in a kind of organized chaos. She was about 30, with short, dark hair and the kind of intense, focused gaze that comes from spending years deciphering lines of code. "Close the door," she said, not even looking up from her screen. I did as I was told. "After you left that meeting," Maya began, her fingers flying across her keyboard, "I did something I probably shouldn't have. Well, actually, I did it last night, but you need to know about it now." My stomach clenched. "What did you do?" "When Eleanor asked for your complete Stellara files yesterday, I made a duplicate set," she said, finally looking up at me, her expression fierce. "And I sent everything to Dr. Reed, the original versions with all the metadata intact, creation dates, revision history, your authorship markers embedded in the code." I sank heavily into the nearest chair. "You sent my files to the client? Without even asking me?" "I sent the truth to someone who would recognize it." Maya's voice was steady and unapologetic. "Chloe, Eleanor has been doing this for 8 months. You're the 4th analyst I've had to watch her do this to." 4th. The word just hung in the air between us. "Leo Grant was the first one back at Summit Strategies," Maya continued, pulling up a spreadsheet that looked like a series of access logs. Here it was Sophia Rossi, then Ben Carter. "You're the latest in a long line." She turned her laptop so I could see. The spreadsheet was a timeline of file access patterns. It showed timestamps of when Eleanor had requested preliminary work from various analysts, and then when she had presented the final versions as her own. March 3rd, Chloe Evans creates Hartley Manufacturing Analysis. April 14th, Eleanor Vance accesses files. April 15th, Eleanor Vance presents to board. July 8th, Chloe Evans creates Riverside Retail Algorithm. August 2nd, Eleanor Vance accesses files. August 3rd, Eleanor Vance presents in quarterly review. The pattern repeated over and over across multiple projects and multiple analysts. "I'm in IT," Maya said quietly. "I see it all. Every file access, every modification, every piece of metadata our systems track. And for the last 8 months, I've been watching Eleanor systematically steal work from good people. Why didn't you do something?" The question came out sharper than I intended. Maya's expression hardened. "I tried. With Sophia. I went to HR with the access logs showing that Eleanor had taken credit for her risk model. You know what they told me? That Eleanor was her supervisor and that collaborative work is part of the job. That any intellectual property developed on company time belongs to the company." She slammed her laptop shut with more force than was necessary. Sophia filed a formal complaint, but Eleanor has connections on the board. Apex buried the whole thing. They gave Eleanor a promotion and Sophia got a generous severance package to leave quietly. Last I heard, she's working as a freelance consultant. My throat felt tight. Why did Apex even hire her if she had this history? Maya let out a bitter laugh. Because Summit's official story was that Eleanor left for a better opportunity. They protected their reputation. She came here with glowing recommendations and an impressive resume, and nobody knew the truth except the people she'd already destroyed. And we had all signed NDAs. She pulled up another file, this one detailing Eleanor's employment history. She's done this at 3 different companies over the last 7 years. It's the same pattern every time. She comes in as a senior director, identifies the most talented analysts, takes credit for their best work, builds up her own reputation, and then gets promoted or moves on to a bigger firm before anyone can piece it all together. My hands were shaking again. How do you know all of this? Because I worked with Leo at Summit, her voice cracked just a little. He was my mentor. He taught me everything I know about data forensics. I watched Eleanor destroy him, and there was nothing I could do to stop it. When she showed up here 8 months ago, I knew exactly what was going to happen. Then why didn't you warn me? I wasn't angry, just confused and desperate. I did, Maya said quietly. 3 months ago in the break room. Remember? The memory came back to me slowly. Maya pulling me aside, her voice low and urgent. You need to be careful with Eleanor. Document everything. Keep your own copies. I had thanked her, but I'd dismissed her concerns. I told her my work would speak for itself, that the timestamps and metadata would prove who did what if there was ever a question. You told me timestamps could be faked, I said, remembering. Eleanor is good at that. Maya's expression was grim, framing it all as supervisory refinement or strategic oversight. What you needed was someone with power and credibility to stand up and say they saw what was really happening. Dr. Reed. Exactly. Maya reopened her laptop. When I saw Eleanor request your Stellara files yesterday, I knew she was going to pull the same stunt. So I made a choice. I sent your complete file history to Dr. Reed, along with a note explaining Eleanor's history. My breath caught in my throat. What did the note say? The truth. That Eleanor Vance has a history of intellectual property theft, that she's done this at multiple companies, and that you're the 4th analyst she's targeted at Apex alone. Maya met my eyes. I also sent her Leo's original files from Summit. He gave me permission years ago to share them if her pattern ever continued. The implications were staggering. Maya, you could lose your job for this. I know, her voice was steady, but I am so tired of watching talented people get crushed because no one has the guts to fight back. Leo had no one. Sophia was too scared. Ben left before it got worse. She leaned forward, her expression intense. But you, Chloe, you have Dr. Reed on your side. And she isn't the type to let this go. She invented the very methodology Eleanor just tried to discredit. She has the authority to expose this. My phone buzzed. It was an email from an address I didn't recognize. Chloe, I have received your file history. The patterns are confirmed. Stay at your desk. Events may move quickly. ER. Evelyn Reed. I looked at Maya. She's going back into that conference room right now. She's going to ask Eleanor technical questions. Maya's smile was sharp. Questions Eleanor can't possibly answer. And then what? Then the truth comes out, Maya said, standing up and gathering her things. And Eleanor Vance finally has to face the consequences. She walked to the door, then paused. Chloe, whatever happens next, do not apologize. Don't downplay your work. And don't let anyone convince you that you needed Eleanor to make your analysis matter. Her voice was fierce. You're brilliant. Your work is exceptional, and it's time everyone knew it. I sat in my cubicle for the next 2 hours just staring at spreadsheets of file metadata and trying to process what Maya had told me. 4 analysts, 3 companies, a 7-year history of systematic theft. The office had emptied out as people left for lunch or afternoon appointments. Somewhere in this building, Eleanor was probably still trapped in that conference room with Dr. Reed, fumbling through technical questions she couldn't possibly understand. Or maybe the meeting was over. Maybe Eleanor had charmed her way out of it. Maybe I was just sitting here clinging to a sliver of false hope while my career went up in flames. My email pinged at 3:47 p.m. Chloe Evans, CEO's office, 4 p.m. Do not be late. Richard Harrison. My stomach dropped to the floor. The CEO himself. Not HR, not my department head. The CEO. I thought about texting Maya, but what could I even say? I stood up on legs that felt like jelly, smoothed down my blazer with trembling hands, and walked toward the elevators like a prisoner heading for their own execution. The executive floor was quiet in a way that felt intentionally menacing. Thick carpets muffled every sound, mahogany doors gleamed with brass nameplates, and the art on the walls probably cost more than my annual salary. Mr. Harrison's assistant, a woman in her 50s with an unreadable expression and perfect posture, simply gestured toward his office door without a word. I walked in and immediately regretted it. Mr. Harrison sat behind a desk that was roughly the size of a small car. Behind him, floor-to-ceiling windows offered a panoramic view of the Boston skyline, bathed in the golden light of the afternoon. And in the chair beside his desk, with perfect posture and an expression of carefully constructed concern, sat Eleanor Vance. She looked up as I entered, and something flickered across her face. Surprise, satisfaction, maybe even fear. "Chloe, sit." Mr. Harrison's voice was clipped and devoid of any warmth. I sat in the only remaining chair, which I noticed was positioned slightly lower than Eleanor's. A subtle but clear power play. "Eleanor has brought some troubling issues to my attention regarding your work on the Stellara project," Mr. Harrison began. "She suggests that perhaps you weren't ready for an account of this size." My throat went dry. "She has also mentioned," he continued, his eyes drilling into me, "that you've been resistant to her supervision, that you've shown a pattern of defensiveness when your work is critiqued." Eleanor leaned forward, her voice soft and full of concern. "Chloe, I know you've put a lot of effort into this project. No one is questioning your work ethic, but the reality is that your analytical approach showed some fundamental gaps in understanding." She paused, letting the accusation hang in the air. "I'm not trying to punish you," she went on, her tone now almost motherly. "I'm trying to help you grow. Sometimes we all need honest feedback to see our own limitations." I just stared at her. This woman who had systematically stolen my work for 8 months, and I felt a cold, clear sense of recognition wash over me. She was a master at this, the concerned mentor, forced to deliver difficult truths for the good of her struggling employee. Every part of her body language reinforced the narrative. I turned to Mr. Harrison. "Did Dr. Reed from Stellara express any concerns about my work?" His expression wavered for a fraction of a second. Discomfort? Uncertainty? "Dr. Reed has requested a follow-up meeting for tomorrow morning," he said carefully. "We are still assessing the situation." Eleanor's smile tightened almost imperceptibly. "Richard," she said, turning her attention back to him, "I think what Chloe needs is some time away from high-pressure client accounts. Perhaps we could reassign her to some internal projects where she can rebuild her skills without the added stress." My hands clenched into fists in my lap. This was her move. She was going to bury me in irrelevant busy work while she continued to build her career on my stolen accomplishments. "There is also the matter of the files," Eleanor added, her voice still smooth and reasonable. "It seems Chloe sent preliminary work directly to Dr. Reed without following the proper chain of command. That's a serious breach of protocol." My face went hot. "That's not true. Is that true, Chloe?" Mr. Harrison's expression hardened. "I sent my files to Eleanor," I said, forcing my voice to remain steady, "for her review. I never sent anything directly to the client." Eleanor's smile was patient, almost pitying. Perhaps there was some confusion. "You were under a lot of stress. It's understandable that details might get muddled." She turned back to Mr. Harrison, dismissing me as if I wasn't even in the room. "Regardless," she said, "we need to address the larger issue here and ensure our analysts are being properly supervised. I'm happy to take over the Stellara account personally. I can salvage the relationship and rebuild their confidence in our firm. Chloe can provide support on the back end, data collection, preliminary models, that sort of thing. Support, back end, preliminary. All the words that meant invisible, uncredited, and ultimately erasable." Mr. Harrison was quiet for a long moment. "We'll discuss potential reassignments after tomorrow's meeting with Dr. Reed," he finally said. "Chloe, you're dismissed. Eleanor, we need to discuss transition plans." I stood up and walked toward the door on legs that felt completely disconnected from my body. Just as I was leaving, I heard Eleanor say, "I really do think this is for the best, Richard. Sometimes raw talent just needs time to mature." The door clicked shut behind me. I don't remember the elevator ride down or walking through the parking garage or even getting into my car. The next thing I knew, I was sitting in my apartment staring at my laptop screen as darkness fell outside. My phone rang. It was my mom. How did the big presentation go? Her voice was bright and full of excitement. I opened my mouth, but no words came out. "Chloe? Honey, are you there?" "It went badly, Mom," I finally managed. "Really, really badly." The whole story came pouring out of me in a torrent of words. Eleanor's public humiliation, the meeting in the CEO's office, the threat of reassignment. When I finally stopped, my mom was quiet for a long time. "Do you have proof?" she asked. "Proof that you did the work?" I thought about the file timestamps that could be explained away, the metadata that required an expert to interpret. "It's complicated," I said. "Then uncomplicate it." Her voice turned fierce, a tone I hadn't heard since she'd defended me to a middle school principal. "You are the smartest person I know, Chloe. If someone is stealing from you, you find a way to prove it." After we hung up, I sat in the dark and pulled up my project files, all of them. I started documenting everything: creation dates, modification logs, email exchanges where I'd sent my work to Eleanor. The pattern was undeniable. But would it be enough? My phone rang again at 10:03 p.m. It was Maya. "You need to know something?" she said without preamble, her voice tight with stress. "Eleanor just submitted a formal complaint against you to HR. I saw it come through the system an hour ago." The walls of my small apartment suddenly felt like they were closing in. What kind of complaint? Insubordination, unauthorized client contact, poor performance requiring immediate remedial action. Maya's words were fast and urgent. "She's building a case to have you fired, Chloe. She's moving fast because she knows Dr. Reed saw through her act." I closed my eyes. "When?" "The complaint requests an emergency review as early as tomorrow morning," she paused. "But there's something else. If HR investigates how Dr. Reed got those files, they're going to find out what I did." The weight of the risk she had taken for me settled in my chest like a block of ice. "Maya, I can't let you do that. I made my choice." She cut me off. Outside my window, the city lights glittered. Somewhere out there, Eleanor was probably sleeping soundly, confident that she would bury me tomorrow. Somewhere else, Dr. Evelyn Reed was planning her next move, and I was stuck in the middle, armed with documentation that might mean nothing, and hoping that the truth would somehow be enough. My laptop screen glowed in the dark, the spreadsheets of metadata still open. I pulled up a new email and started typing. "Dr. Reed. Attached are the complete file histories for all major projects I completed under Eleanor Vance's supervision. You will see the pattern. I hope it's enough. Chloe Evans." I attached the documentation and hit send before I could talk myself out of it. The email vanished into the digital ether. I closed my laptop and just sat in the darkness, wondering if tomorrow would bring justice or the end of my career. And if there was even a difference between the two. I didn't sleep at all. I just lay in bed, watching the headlights of passing cars sweep across my ceiling, playing out 100 different scenarios for the morning. Eleanor would deny everything. Mr. Harrison would believe her because she was a senior director, and I was just an analyst. Dr. Reed's intervention would be dismissed as a client overstepping. By the time my alarm went off at 6, I was already dressed and wide awake. I chose my outfit carefully: a navy blazer, a crisp white blouse, minimal jewelry. It was professional armor for the battle to come. My hand shook so much when I tried to apply mascara that I had to start over twice. The email I'd sent to Dr. Reed had gone unanswered. Maybe she'd had second thoughts. Maybe she'd decided I wasn't worth the trouble. Maybe I was about to walk into that building and find out I was already finished. I drove to Apex on autopilot, my mind a blank slate of exhausted dread. The parking garage was still mostly empty at 7:15 a.m. I sat in my car for 10 minutes, just watching the clock tick closer to the moment I'd have to walk inside and face my fate. At 7:28, my phone buzzed. Main conference room. Now. It was from Mr. Harrison's assistant. The executive assistant was waiting for me by the elevators when I stepped into the lobby. Her expression was neutral, but I thought I saw a flicker of sympathy in her eyes. "They're waiting for you," she said quietly. My legs felt like they belonged to someone else as I followed her. The elevator ride was silent. When the doors opened onto the executive floor, she led me past Mr. Harrison's office and down to the main conference room, the big one reserved for board meetings. Through the glass wall, I could see 3 people already seated at the long table. Mr. Harrison at the head, the company's general counsel, Ms. Davies to his left, a sharp-featured woman with steel gray hair I'd only ever seen from a distance, and Dr. Evelyn Reed to his right. Eleanor was nowhere in sight. The assistant opened the door. "Ms. Evans is here." Evelyn looked up, her expression unreadable behind her designer glasses. "Chloe, thank you for joining us. Please, have a seat." I sat in the chair directly across from her, feeling completely exposed under their collective gaze. "I've been explaining to Richard and Patricia," Evelyn began, her tone professional but with a hard edge I hadn't heard before, "that Stellara Corporation has very specific requirements for this engagement." Mr. Harrison shifted uncomfortably in his seat. "Dr. Reed, we are absolutely committed to meeting your needs, but certain internal matters." Evelyn held up a hand, cutting him off with a gesture so casual it was almost dismissive. "Let me be clear," she said. "The analysis Chloe presented yesterday demonstrates a sophisticated understanding of a consumer segmentation methodology that I personally developed. The critique offered by Ms. Vance was not only inaccurate, it revealed a fundamental misunderstanding of basic analytical principles." She slid a document across the polished table toward Mr. Harrison and Ms. Davies. "This is a comparison of the file metadata from the work Chloe submitted versus the presentation Ms. Vance delivered. The timestamps, revision histories, and embedded authorship data tell a very specific story." Ms. Davies picked up the document, her eyes scanning the pages. Her expression didn't change, but her mouth tightened. "These files show," she said slowly, reading from the page, "that the original analysis was created by Chloe Evans over an 11-week period. Ms. Vance accessed these files for the first time yesterday at 2:47 p.m. The silence in the room was deafening. She then made superficial changes, Miss." Davies continued and presented a degraded preliminary version of the work as the correct approach. "The metadata is unambiguous." Mr. Harrison's face was a careful, blank mask. "Dr. Reed, I appreciate you bringing this to our attention, but matters of employee supervision." "I've also compiled similar metadata comparisons," Evelyn interrupted, pulling more documents from her portfolio, "for 3 other major projects completed during Ms. Vance's tenure here: Hartley Manufacturing, Riverside Retail, the Davidson Hotel Group." She spread the documents on the table like a prosecutor presenting evidence. In every single case, the pattern is identical. Chloe Evans creates sophisticated analytical work over a period of weeks or months. Ms. Vance accesses the files just before a major presentation, claims authorship, and receives credit for methodologies she clearly does not understand. My heart was pounding so hard I could feel it in my throat. Ms. Davies was now leafing through the new documents, her expression growing darker with each page she turned. "Richard, these timestamps are concerning," she said. Mr. Harrison nodded slowly. "I agree, but metadata can sometimes be—" "These are not allegations," Evelyn cut in, her voice turning cold. "They are documented facts. The only question is what Apex Data Solutions intends to do about them." She closed her portfolio with a sharp snap that echoed in the quiet room. "Because Stellara Corporation will not be engaging with a firm that condones systematic intellectual property theft. The threat hung in the air. $18 million, the biggest contract Apex had pursued in 5 years. Gone, unless they fix this." Mr. Harrison's jaw worked silently for a moment. He then turned to his assistant, who was still standing by the door. "Get Eleanor Vance up here, now." We waited in a tense, heavy silence. Ms. Davies reviewed the documents again, making notes on a legal pad. Mr. Harrison stared out the window at the Boston skyline, his face unreadable. Evelyn sat perfectly still, radiating a calm authority that seemed to fill the room. I felt like I was watching a movie about my own life. 15 minutes later, the door swung open and Eleanor walked in. She was impeccably dressed, as always, in a charcoal suit and a silk blouse. But when she saw who was sitting around the table, a look of confusion, then controlled alarm, crossed her face. "Richard," she said, her voice striking the perfect note of professional concern. "What's this about?" Mr. Harrison gestured to an empty chair. "We're reviewing the Stellara presentation. Some questions have come up regarding project authorship." Eleanor's expression smoothed into one of polite attentiveness as she sat down. "Of course," she said. "I'm happy to clarify any confusion." Her eyes flicked toward me for a brief moment before looking away. Chloe did some excellent preliminary work, though she sometimes struggles to translate raw research into client-ready presentations. That's why I often step in to refine and present. It's part of my role as a mentor. Evelyn's face remained a neutral mask. "Can you explain the clustering algorithm used in Chloe's Stellara analysis?" Eleanor's smile didn't falter, but I saw her pupils dilate. "Certainly. It's a standard demographic segmentation approach with adjusted confidence intervals to—" "Standard according to which framework?" Evelyn interrupted. "Modified Pearson," Eleanor said smoothly. It was a vague, technically correct answer she had probably pulled from an executive summary. "Interesting," Evelyn said. "And how did you account for seasonal volatility in the spending data?" Eleanor's pause was almost imperceptible. "That's factored into the baseline projections using standard deviation analysis. It was corporate jargon, an answer designed to sound sophisticated while saying nothing at all." Evelyn leaned forward. "Could you walk me through the Bayesian modification you applied to reduce the margin of error?" "I would need to review the specific technical documentation to speak to those details," Eleanor said, her smile still in place but looking strained. "You claim to have authored those technical details," Evelyn replied. "You presented them to this firm's leadership and to my organization as your own strategic framework." Eleanor's composure finally cracked. "I supervised the development of—" "The metadata shows no supervisory involvement during the 11-week creation period," Ms. Davies cut in, her voice sharp and direct. "You accessed Chloe's files for the first time 23 hours before the presentation." Eleanor's eyes darted between them. "That's not true. I reviewed preliminary drafts. The logs might not—" "The access logs capture everything," a new voice said from the doorway. Maya Singh stood there, her laptop under her arm, her expression calm and professional. Ms. Davies nodded at her. "Ms. Singh, thank you for joining us. Could you explain our file tracking systems for everyone present?" Maya entered and connected her laptop to the room's display. In seconds, a visual timeline of my Stellara project files filled the screen. Every file created on our network, Maya explained, her voice steady, contains embedded metadata, creation dates, modification history, authorship stamps. This data is backed up to our secure servers and cannot be altered without creating a separate audit trail. She highlighted sections of the timeline. These files were created by Chloe Evans beginning February 14th. The work progressed through multiple iterations over 11 weeks, with all modifications made from Chloe's workstation. The timeline showed every late night, every weekend session, every single refinement. On May 28th, at 2:47 p.m., Maya continued, Eleanor Vance accessed these files for the first time. She made cosmetic changes to an early draft dated March 9th, a version Chloe had already improved upon, and presented that outdated version at yesterday's meeting. Eleanor's face had gone from composed to flushed. This is absurd. I supervise Chloe's work. Of course I access her files. The logs show no supervisory review during the creation period, Maya said, her voice level. Only that single access 23 hours before the presentation. She then pulled up additional timelines. The same pattern appears in the Hartley Manufacturing Project, the Riverside Retail Analysis, and the Davidson Hotel Group Assessment. Each timeline told the exact same story. Weeks of my work, a single access from Eleanor right before the presentation, and all the credit claimed by her. The room was completely silent. Eleanor stared at the screen, her composure finally crumbling, her systematic theft laid bare in irrefutable detail. For a long moment, nobody moved. Then Ms. Davies closed her laptop with a decisive snap. We're going to take a brief recess. 15 minutes later, the meeting reconvened in a larger conference room. When I walked in, two people I didn't recognize were sitting at the table alongside Mr. Harrison, Ms. Davies, and Evelyn. Sophia Rossi was a petite woman in her early 30s, with her dark hair pulled back and a quiet fury in her eyes. Ben Carter, the man from finance, looked uncomfortable, shifting in his seat. Eleanor was conspicuously absent. Ms. Rossi, Mr. Carter, Ms. Davies began, thank you for coming. I understand you have information relevant to our investigation into Eleanor Vance's conduct. Sophia spoke first, her voice steady. Eleanor became my supervisor last October. Within 3 months, she had taken credit for 2 of my projects. She slid a folder across the table to Ms. Davies, a customer lifetime value model and a market penetration analysis. When I tried to push back, she wrote me up for being resistant to collaborative processes. I left 6 months ago because it was my word against a senior director's. She looked at me for the first time, but Maya showed me the file metadata. It's the same pattern. Ben Carter cleared his throat. I have something similar, but it goes back further. I worked at Summit Strategies before coming here. So did Eleanor. There was an analyst there named Leo Grant, one of the best in the industry. His jaw tightened. Eleanor was his supervisor. He developed a proprietary risk model that was revolutionary. She presented it to the board as her own. When Leo complained, she claimed he'd been working under her strategic direction. Summit's leadership buried it. They had relationships on the board. They gave her a promotion and a generous exit package to leave quietly. Leo was pushed out with an NDA and no reference. Last I heard, he's managing a bookstore in Portland. Do you have documentation? Evelyn asked. Leo gave me copies of everything before he left, Ben said, pushing his own folder toward Ms. Davies. Original work files, research notes, emails. He wanted to make sure she couldn't do this to anyone else. Mr. Harrison looked like he'd been physically struck. Why didn't you say something when we hired her? Ben met his gaze. Because I was afraid. Because I saw a major firm protect her and destroy a man's career. But I'm not making that mistake again. Just as Ms. Davies was comparing the documents, Maya knocked and entered without waiting. You need to see this, she said, connecting her laptop to the display. Billing records filled the screen, cross-referenced with internal time logs. I pulled billing data for every project Eleanor supervised, Maya explained. There's a consistent pattern of overinflation. On the Thomson-Hardy analysis, Chloe worked 298 hours. The client was billed for $340. The extra 42 hours were attributed to Eleanor's executive oversight at her director-level rate. How much? Ms. Davies's expression was dark. $27,300, Maya said. For work, the file logs prove she never performed. She pulled up more records. Hartley Manufacturing, Riverside Retail, Davidson Hotel Group, the numbers kept coming. Across all projects, Maya said, her voice tight, clients were overbilled by approximately $215,000 for work, attributed to Eleanor that she never did. The room went deadly silent. This is no longer just intellectual property theft, Ms. Davies said, her lawyer's voice cold and precise. This is client fraud, wire fraud given the interstate nature of the business. We could be looking at federal charges. The door opened and Eleanor walked back in, summoned by the assistant. She saw the billing records on the screen and froze. "Ms. Vance," Ms. Davies said, sliding an invoice across the table. "This bill itemizes 68 hours you charged for analytical development. Can you provide any documentation of this work?" Eleanor's hands trembled as she picked up the invoice. Those hours represent strategic oversight, client relationship management, work that happens outside of direct file access, work you can't document, Ms. Davies stated. "I don't track every single email and conversation," Eleanor insisted, her voice rising. Evelyn, who had been silent, finally turned from the window. "Ms. Vance," she said, her voice carrying absolute authority, "I've reviewed your supposed refinements to Chloe's analysis. You took a sophisticated predictive model and replaced it with basic linear regression. You degraded the work, then presented the degraded version as an improvement. That isn't refinement. That is incompetence masquerading as expertise." Eleanor's face flushed with anger. "You have no right." "I have every right." Evelyn cut her off, her voice like ice. "You publicly criticized a methodology I created in front of me, while trying to steal work from an analyst who actually understands it." She leaned forward. "I'm not just a client, Ms. Vance. I'm the Reed in the Reed-Henley model, and I will not allow my life's work to be weaponized against talented analysts by someone who doesn't understand its first principles." For the first time since I had met her, Eleanor Vance had absolutely nothing to say. The board voted 30 minutes later. It was unanimous. Eleanor Vance was terminated, effective immediately. The board chair, Carolyn Winters, read the decision in a formal, dispassionate tone. "Ms. Vance, your employment with Apex Data Solutions is terminated for cause. You will be escorted from the building. All access to company systems has been revoked." She paused. "Additionally, the board is authorizing a full forensic audit. We will be notifying all affected clients of the billing discrepancies and offering full restitution. We are also legally obligated to report this matter to the proper authorities." Eleanor sat perfectly still, her face ashen. "Do you have anything to say?" the chair asked. Eleanor just shook her head. "Then this meeting is adjourned." People filed out quickly. When the room was empty except for me and Maya, I sat staring at the table where Eleanor's career had just ended. "You okay?" Maya asked. I didn't know how to answer. I had won. The truth was out, but the victory felt strangely hollow. "I keep thinking about what she said," I admitted, "that she made our work matter." Maya sat down beside me, her expression fierce. "Chloe, you know that's garbage, right? Your work mattered because it was brilliant. She just stole the credit and gaslit you into thinking you needed her." She pulled out her phone and showed me an email from a client I'd worked with 18 months ago before Eleanor. Chloe's market analysis transformed our expansion strategy. Her insights were precise, actionable, and delivered with exceptional clarity. "We've specifically requested her for our next project." "You didn't need her then," Maya said, "and you don't need her now. You never did." Over the next week, a few strange things happened. 2 junior analysts who had been close to Eleanor quit. They had genuinely believed in her, and the truth had shattered their view of the company. I also saw Ben Carter from finance avoiding me in the hallways, looking away whenever we passed. Cowardice looks different after you've seen courage up close. On Thursday, Ms. Davies called me into her office. She showed me a stack of emails from the past 6 months, project assignments where my name was on the initial list, only to be removed in later revisions. Eleanor was systematically cutting you out of high-visibility opportunities, Ms. Davies explained. She was actively destroying your career path here. I accepted Evelyn's job offer that afternoon. My last day at Apex was 2 weeks later. It felt surreal. Colleagues said goodbye, some genuinely sad, others awkward. No one mentioned Eleanor. Sophia Rossi sent me a message. "Thank you for fighting. Watching you gave me something I'd lost. Good luck at Stellara. You'll be incredible." As I drove away for the last time, I glanced in the rearview mirror until the building disappeared. 6 months later, I sat in my new office at Stellara Corporation. It was a real office, with a door and a window overlooking the Charles River. I was reviewing work from my team, 4 brilliant analysts who reported directly to me. Evelyn stopped by my office one afternoon. "The board loved your presentation," she said. "They're expanding your division." She handed me a business card. "Someone wants to meet you." The name on the card was Leo Grant, Consultant, Risk Assessment, Strategic Analysis. "He's thinking about partnering with us," Evelyn explained. "He specifically requested to work with you. Said he wanted to collaborate with someone who understood what it meant to have your work stolen and still find the courage to fight." I met Leo the following week. He was quieter than I expected, but when he started talking about risk modeling, his eyes lit up with the same passion I felt for my own work. We started collaborating on a new project, integrating his risk frameworks with my consumer insights. One evening, working late, Leo looked at me and said, "Eleanor taught me that talent without protection is vulnerable. But you taught me something more important. That integrity is its own form of power. Because when the truth comes out, people who build their careers on lies have nothing left. But people like us, we always have our work." I thought about Eleanor, probably out there somewhere trying to rebuild. But that wasn't my burden anymore. My phone buzzed, an email from one of my analysts with new findings. Smart observations. Work I'd get to present next week with her name properly credited. I looked out my window at the Boston skyline. This was the city where I'd been humiliated, where I'd stood on a rooftop and learned that competence and theft are not the same thing. I'd learned the best revenge isn't destruction. It's becoming so undeniably good at what you do that justice delivers itself. My work spoke for itself now, and when it did, the whole room listened. Not because someone else presented it, but because I had finally learned something Eleanor never understood. Real talent doesn't need to be stolen to matter. It just needs to be seen, and sometimes being seen just means refusing to be erased. End of story.